Radhika, stay on the line. I also want to bring in Nicholas Nugent. He's joining us from London, a UK journalist, a former BBC editor. Nicholas, it was a surprise move when Boris Johnson, who had cut short a holiday in the Caribbean, to rush back to London to secure the backing of 100 lawmakers. He then pulled out and he said he would not be able to lead a united party in Parliament. Is that now going to be Rishi Sunak's problem? Is he going to be looking, behind his back all the time on that front too? Or does he actually now have the support of a united party who are just voting for stability?
No, I don't think he'll be looking over his shoulder at all. And frankly, I don't take at face value Boris Johnson's comments last night that he was the one to unite the party. The reality was he did not get enough votes. Rather like Penny Mordaunt also today did not get enough votes. The party had deliberately set the bar rather higher this time than last time, requiring the support of 100 members of the MPs in the Conservative Party in the House of Commons, and only one person got there. And I think, frankly, that gives him an overwhelming mandate to rule as he chooses to rule, not as any of his competitors, his rivals, might think he should rule. He is his own man. I trust him. The people, the MPs trust him. That's what really matters. I think the only perhaps blemish to the whole proceeding is that the non-Conservative members of Parliament and indeed members of the country think it's high time we had a general election to reselect the party and the person that should rule. But within the rules that we elect a Parliament for 5 years, Rishi has persevered, and I think he has a lot of popular support. And I think he also has a very good chance of bringing the Conservative Party back from the very low opinion poll ratings that it's suffering at the moment. Certainly. I'm not saying he'll win the election next time round, but he has a better chance than any of the others.
And he will be the candidate of the Conservative Party whenever that election takes place, you're saying. But, Penny Mordaunt, where she pulled out, she has supported Rishi Sunak. She's thrown her weight behind Rishi Sunak. What about Boris Johnson? And are we now going to, again, is Rishi Sunak going to fear that Boris in the coming few months is going to do to him what Boris claims Rishi Sunak did to him previously?
No, I don't think so, because I don't see Boris getting a position in the new cabinet. He, after all, faces sanction from the members of Parliament over his behaviour last year. He's not through the woods, is Boris Johnson, and I would have been incredibly surprised if he'd got the 100 votes that he needed. So he's really out of it at the moment, facing censure within Parliament. We will see in time. So, frankly, his influence has gone. And those who thought he was the great vote winner, as he was in 2019, now realise that he's damaged goods, frankly. So I don't see him as being having a place in the cabinet or being an influence in the future. Penny Mordaunt, she might well get into the cabinet. That they may well have done a deal for all we know. But Rishi's his own man. He can make his own selections. And we'll be waiting with great interest to see who he chooses, who he puts into his new cabinet after he's sworn in tomorrow. Let's not forget, he has to be invited by the King to form a government, and that won't take place till tomorrow. So technically, he's not Prime Minister until that process has happened at Buckingham Palace tomorrow, and then he nominates his government, which we'll all be waiting with interest to see who's in.
Nicholas, hi, Radhika here, and I'm coming to you from London. I'd like to take this conversation slightly outside of the Conservative Party. We know that the Conservative Party is split down the middle, but how is Britain perceiving Rishi Sunak as? Of course, from India point of view, he is the first person of Indian origin to make it to UK's top job. But the fact that he's also the first person of colour to make it to the Prime Minister's job in Britain is much being made out of the fact that he is a person of colour from South Asian origin, or is he just seen simply as someone who can bring some economic stability?
Well, you know, I was asked that question quite a lot during the first competition when Liz Truss triumphed over him. And I said, no, that's not true at all. It's not a racial factor, because don't forget that he was elected to Parliament by a very conservative, with a small c, part of Britain, North Yorkshire, with a majority of 27,000. And believe you me, that is a massive majority. So he was very, very well placed within the party, even before the competition, the two competitions we've had this year. I like to think that skin colour matters no whit in politics today, and I think today's success rather proves that. And I might add that as somebody who has spent much more of my life in India than Rishi Sunak has, I too am sharing your rejoicing that this is a nice Diwali occasion that Rishi Sunak has triumphed. I really don't think his skin colour or country of origin will be any disadvantage to him. On the contrary, I think the fact that he has stewarded the finance ministry through two and a half years, I think it was, with great acclaim, stood him in the best stead. And that is why, as well as having that large majority in his constituency in North Yorkshire, he now has a large majority of support from Conservative members of Parliament. So he's got everything going for him.
Nicholas, if I could just press you a little more on this. This, of course, is, you know, so many comparisons being made to President Obama and how he broke that glass ceiling, making it as the first black or the first African-American president of the United States. And now you have the first South Asian Prime Minister of the UK. But on the ground, I think we saw some ugliness a week ago. We had some caller on a Britain Popular radio show claiming that Rishi Sunak doesn't love England, isn't even British in most people's opinion. Is that, do you think, given the fact that there has been so much instability, that is enough to override any of these, you know, niggling irritants that may pop up? Do you still see that happening going forward?
Well, yes, I don't see those niggling irritants. After all, Rishi, I mean, he was born and brought up in Britain. He is very British in many ways, though I don't blame you for claiming him as Indian as well. But as I've already indicated, he hasn't really spent much time in India at all. He did go through a rough patch when it was pointed out how wealthy he was, and indeed that his wife has non-dom status. That means she doesn't pay UK taxes. That's been corrected now in the sense that she has now agreed to pay taxes wherever they're earned or in whatever country wants to tax her. Yes, he comes from a very wealthy background, but that wasn't a disadvantage to many other members of the cabinet, including, for example, the Minister of Finance, Jeremy Hunt. He's also very wealthy. It's not something to be held against you, but you are perhaps right that that factor of his wife's non-tax status did play into the first round of the contest when Liz Truss won over Rishi Sunak. I think an awful lot of people, having seen how Liz Truss performed, are considerably relieved now that we have as our Prime Minister somebody who appears to understand economics to a much greater degree than she did. So, as you can see, I'm very positive about it all. But can I say one more thing about this this suggested charge of racism as to why he didn't get chosen before? I'm going to say one thing very positive about Boris Johnson, because whatever else he did, he brought a lot of non-white people into his cabinet, which was very good. And if anybody broke the barrier, I think it was Boris Johnson's formation of his cabinet. Correct. I forget quite the proportions, but there were a large number of people who were either not born in Britain or were not white. And that really changed British politics quite significantly. So I'm giving Boris Johnson full marks for diversity, for diversifying the cabinet. And now we're seeing one of the early results of that we have a non-white Prime Minister. And as to ever we've had one before, there's been a debate going on into Britain as to whether he's the first representative of an ethnic minority. which we believe he broadly is, but they do point out that we've had a Jewish prime minister before. So if we take it into religion, we had Disraeli in, I think, the 19th, or was it even, 19th century. So we have had one from a religious minority before. But in terms of skin colour and true ethnic minority, Rishi certainly is the first. And indeed, he's one of the youngest prime ministers we ever had at age 42.
Only 42.
The first PM of colour, the first Prime Minister of Indian origin, many firsts for Rishi, and also the fact that he now has two jobs, as we know. He's not just the Prime Minister of this nation, Nicholas, he's also the leader of the Conservative Party, and he has plenty of challenges before him, economic, political, given the Conservative Party has been split down the middle, down to the grassroots level. So in your opinion, what should be his first few tasks?
Well, the first thing we're waiting to see is whether he retains Jeremy Hunt as his Minister of Finance or Chancellor of the Exchequer. And the expectation is that he will. If that happens, then we have two grown-ups in charge. That's how we're loosely describing it after the fiasco of our recent government, to have two grown-ups in charge. And I don't think there's any doubt at all that finance, the economy, tax and expenditure will be the priorities. We have scheduled 1 week today, we have scheduled a proper budget. You've heard talk of our famous mini budget that was rowed back on very considerably when Jeremy Hunt took office. Now Jeremy Hunt, assuming he does keep that post, will be before Parliament again a week today to really try to straighten out the economy. But the signs are good, because already when it became clear that Rishi was taking over, the pound has gone up and the cost of government borrowing has gone down. The markets really speak volumes. And the fact that they have reacted so positively to, well, two things. One is us choosing, or not us, but parliamentarians choosing Rishi Sunak as a new leader. But the second thing is stability. We have now a great expectation that the government that is taking office this week will last till the next election. Of course, we can't be absolutely certain about that, but provided they play their cards very carefully in the first few days, the expectation is that they will rule for 2 years or more. In other words, they will complete this parliament. So I think economy is absolutely number one on the agenda. There are plenty of other things I could list, like wages and strikes and the National Health Service and climate change, with a conference coming up in Egypt, and plenty of other things. And by the way, I'm now waiting, because I tend to focus on foreign affairs, I'm waiting with interest to see whether Rishi will go to the G20 in Bali in the middle of next month, where he'll have the first opportunity to meet Narendra Modi, amongst others. This will be his first significant outing on the international stage. So that's what I'm interested in. But he has a lot of things to resolve first. And top of the list, absolutely top of the list, is the economy and the extent to which he will either turn the clock back to the sort of economic policy that he pursued when he was in office as Minister of Finance, or whether he will come up with some new ideas. But I suspect that he and Jeremy Hunt will be working hard over the next few days to develop new economic policy with the main priority of demonstrating to the markets stability. I think that's what this week will be about, essentially.
Well, after having 3 prime ministers in 7 months, stability is what everybody is seeking. And of course, Rishi Sunak doesn't have time to rest on his laurels, doesn't have time to even soak in this moment because, as Nicholas has been pointing out, he has a lot on his plate when it comes to the economy. But Nicholas Nugent, what happens now? What happens next? Can you just take us through what we should expect in the next 24 hours of this historic moment in UK politics?
Yes. Firstly, Liz Truss has to fulfil her promise to resign, which she technically will do by going to Buckingham Palace and tendering her resignation to the King. That's how it works. And almost before she's left Buckingham Palace, Rishi Sunak can be expected to be on his way to be invited to form a government. So that takes place We don't yet have timings for this, but the expectation is it'll be tomorrow, possibly in the morning, but we'll wait and see. And then after that, we will get the announcement of the senior members of Rishi Sunak's government. I don't think he will announce anything before he's been invited to form a government. We have to go through those formalities. They're very important in our system. As you know, you have a similar system. It's very important that the head of state invites the person who commands support within the House of Commons to form a government. But as I've indicated, we can expect probably by the end of tomorrow to get at least the top few names. And bear in mind, there are quite a lot of members of Liz Truss's cabinet who don't know whether they're secure. I would say most of them are not secure because he's a very different person from Liz Truss, and there's a factor too, he has to reward some of his senior supporters. So we will be getting a new cabinet, even if a few names remain as now. It'll be very interesting to see that. It won't happen till late tomorrow, I think.
And lastly, Nicholas, does this whole, the controversy over his wife's wealth, her tax status, and his own individual wealth, does that still loom over the Sunaks still?
Well, I don't think it does, because after all, the Conservatives are a party who believe in, they're a wealthy party, let's put it like that, and they have nothing against people being rich. Let me be blunt about it. The Labour Party is very different, and they believe in a certain levelling up or levelling down, however you care to see it, and they resent rich people in high office. But the Conservatives are quite positive about that. They believe, they have nothing against wealth, let's put it like that. And he has already resolved the one issue that might have been a thorn in his side, which is his wife's tax status. He's resolved that as soon as it became clear. There was a second issue about whether he has a green card to go and live in America. I'm not sure whether he has renounced that. But come on, when you fight to become Prime Minister and to represent the country internationally, that doesn't suggest that you have plans to change your national status within a few years, does it? I think by contesting the election, he has proven that he is British to the core, let's put it like that, despite having that element of Indianness about him as well.